Hello, welcome to Mod Midwives, a Metro midwifery podcast. I'm Gina Gerboth.
And I'm Nedra Hale, and we are home birth midwives serving the Denver metro area.
Well, welcome to our podcast again. We are going to talk about the backup plan today.
Yeah.
And I was just telling Nedra, I think it's a movie title, but it's probably not the same kind of backup plan as the movie title.
I'm struggling to remember what that movie was, but I believe you.
I think it was one of those, if we're not married by 40... then you'll be my backup husband and we'll have a baby movies. I could be totally misremembering this.
I don't know.
Maybe it has Matthew McConaughey in it. Maybe I just wish.
That sounds like it could be possible. I'm not the world's most, up to date on pop culture, so.
Yeah. Well, I'm not either, clearly. But I think it was a movie that meant something different. Anyway, for us in midwifery, the backup plan is our emergency transport plan. Mm-hmm. What do we do when we're deviating from plan A?
Right. So it's really important, obviously, to have a backup plan because that's part of what makes home birth safe, is that we have a plan to change our situation if we move out of what we call a low risk category.
Right. Absolutely. It's not something that we want to go into thinking that we're going to stay home no matter what. We're going to have this baby at home.
Right.
We always have to have an open mind about the way that things will unfold.
Right.
So it is really important, and it's important to talk about it at a couple different points in care too. So we usually start at the interview or the consult, kind of at least talking about what our hospital of choice would be.
Yeah, and I would say that for the majority of people that come in to interview with us, they already have that as one of their questions. What happens if something unexpected happens? And so it is usually a pretty natural conversation.
It is. I've heard some midwives say that they don't want to talk about it too much because they feel like it's negative or it's kind of bringing in negative energy. But I do think that there has to be a balance there because I think that the hardest thing for somebody who does end up transporting is to have not really thought through it and not considered.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough, but and I kind of agree, I guess. I don't want to talk about it every day because we want to keep focused on our goal, right? But in my mind, it's a little bit less stressful to have to make the plan and put it away and just know that it's there if we need it.
One of our colleagues calls it a good luck plan or a good luck.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, like just kind of, it's good luck if we talk about it and don't need to use it.
Yeah, I like that. That's nice.
Yeah, I like that too. So, but it's funny because when I think about when I was planning my home births, we didn't really talk about it, or I don't remember, and it was.
I don't remember either, actually.
Admittedly, quite a long time ago, but I don't remember ever talking about what the plan. I mean, I knew we would have to go to the hospital if there was a problem, but
yeah,
I don't remember really preparing myself for it. In fact, I'm pretty sure it never occurred to me that I would transport.
Oh,
probably not a very wise mindset. So we could talk a little bit about transport rates. Would be something maybe to talk about. So in our practice, we tend to have about a 10 to 12% in labor transport rate, and then about a 2% postpartum mom transport and a 2% postpartum baby transport. So give or take.
Yeah, I just ran, just coincidentally, I got into my Manistats today and ran, not the most recent years, but the probably 5 years or so before that, and it was just under 10 overall.
Wow.
So it was actually
for all three of them.
It was actually less than I thought.
Oh, okay.
But I had dropped off on my Manistats. I'm just gonna full disclosure. So
for those that are listening, Manistats is MANA is the Midwives Alliance of North America. Manistats is a perinatal data registry, and we enter our what's the word I'm looking for? All our outcomes and our practice data and stuff like that into this research database. So Nedra's confessing that
right. And I have a feeling, I practiced at a lower volume over the last few years after that, and I have a feeling that statistically it's going to skew that rate, but probably up to, I bet it's going to go up to like 12, like what you're saying. That sounds like a totally reasonable number, and I will accept it graciously.
Well, and it could be that our numbers aren't always the same. So, and I know these things kind of come in cycles too. Like I'll have one year where it feels like a lot of people transport, and then the next year where nobody transports.
Right. Yeah.
It's not really consistent.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So the more you practice, it will be more consistent over time, but you'll understand that it's not consistent from year to year.
Some years are higher, some years are lower, for sure.
Yeah. So talk about the stress of, you said that you thought it would probably be less stressful to think through it. What do you think?
Well, when I said that, I was thinking as a parent, not so much as a provider, but I feel the same way either way. But as a person who, like in this moment, is dealing with real estate, for example, I think knowing what the plan is at every step of the way is really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Like in the contingencies. If this happens, this happens. If this happens, this happens. And so I was just thinking that knowing what would happen if we ran into something that made us have to change our plan, and I know what hospital we're going to go to, or whatever it is that we're talking about, I think that would be really helpful for me as a person. So
one thing we do at your first prenatal visit, not necessarily the interview, but the first time you come in and you fill in your paperwork, we do put it on paper. We kind of come up with a backup plan. It's not written in blood. We can change it if we need to, but it does give us a starting point for different hospitals that we might go to, different plans in different circumstances. So, for example, in Denver, there's certain hospitals that we really like and some hospitals that we don't like quite as much. Some hospitals are better for babies. Some hospitals are better for having the lowest level of intervention possible. So it kind of depends on why we're going to the hospital as to which hospital. And as I say this, I feel kind of privileged because we have a lot of hospitals to choose from.
We do. This is a great place to practice, and we have lots of choices. There are certainly cities that have one choice, or even maybe no choice is good, and you have to just deal with with a place that's really unfriendly.
And I have practiced in a relatively hostile environment, and it's very different. And it's actually, like you said, transport makes home birth safe, the ability to transport. And when you have a hostile place where you're practicing, it decreases your willingness to transport for those kind of gray areas.
Yes.
And that's not good. That's not good for practice.
Yeah, I believe that it probably causes that decision to be pushed a little bit, at least part of the time, farther than it should be.
So we do feel really lucky here. And I have to say, I've never, and as I say the word never, I am rolling my eyes and thinking that I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to knock on wood. You'll all hear it. I've never had a bad transport in Denver. So in 9 years.
Meaning
with
an unfriendly
or hostile reception.
Yes.
Everybody has received us at least neutrally, but more often positively, I would say.
Yeah.
And even hospitals that the community just kind of doesn't tend to think of as their favorite hospital to go to, I haven't really had a bad reception at those either.
Well, I can unjinx us by saying that I have had at least one unfriendly transport. Maybe 1.5. I was like half involved in another unfriendly transport.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So you've been involved in a couple that were not so great.
Yeah. So, but overall, it's just it is a very friendly city. And, there's all of those reports going around right now about how home birth is safer when we can integrate more into the medical community. Obviously. I mean, this seems like a no-brainer.
Right.
But part of the problem is getting the medical community to accept us for integration. And
correct.
So we're in a pretty good spot where we are in Denver. So,
yeah, the study that you're actually referring to is Sarah Vedam, Vedam. I hope I'm spelling her name right. She just did a mapping the integration, like kind of looking at what parts of the United States there was better integration, and unsurprisingly, they have better outcomes.
Right. So when I'm talking about reports, I'm obviously focused more on the media side, and so
but there is a real scholarly
in the media, but here's the root.
It's a scholarly article. Yes. Well, I have spent the past 2 years working on my master's at Midwives College of Utah, and my focus of that program was interprofessional collaboration and interprofessional education.
So it's a subject that's near and dear.
I have literally been eating, breathing, and sleeping that literature. So, and I think it was published in 2017, possibly 2018. I'm kind of forgetting, but anyway, it's a great study, and everybody
it gives me hope. It really does. I mean, we probably won't still be practicing when all of the states are living in harmony with midwives. And
I feel like singing the Coke song now.
But it gives me hope that maybe we're heading in a good direction. So,
well, the truth of the matter is that home birth isn't going anywhere.
Right.
And so, in order to make it safer, we do have to consider how we can do that. And one is integration into the system. Another is making sure that we're keeping people in our practice, or what am I trying to say? That our practices remain low risk. The clients in our practices remain low risk. Anytime we have somebody kind of leaving that category of low risk, then
we need to appropriately screen.
Exactly. And then the other one is, the presence of a trained birth attendant. So, of course, as midwives, we are already kind of, we're already assuming that category has been met. But those are the 3 ways that we really know that it's improved.
It's hard. I mean, that's one of the things that needs to be addressed is the differences in licensure or not. I mean, the states that don't have any recognition of home birth midwifery at all, and
oh, that reminds me that I totally misspoke when we talked at the when we talked about So You Want to Be a Midwife.
Oh.
I had said 28 states had legal recognition of direct entry midwifery. It's actually 33 now. There's been 5 more recently that have been. So, it is coming around because it's becoming a more common choice, a more, I would say, mainstream choice. And
I mean, it's in the best interest of public health to make it safer, make it legal.
And people are asking for more reimbursement for home birth services. They're asking for more other ancillary services like ultrasounds and labs. And, it's not really something that's off the radar the way that it used to be.
Right.
And so as we start providing care to more, in a more standard of care kind of model, then, it's definitely an important, important movement in the right direction, I guess. So, most of the time that we transport, we consider it non-emergent. So most transports are, we have time, we get to choose which hospital we want to go to. We can pick the one that is the most friendly or the, most receptive. So what would you think would be the most common reason that we transport in labor?
I thought we were even more non-emergent than that, and we were talking about prenatal transfer.
Well, actually, that is prenatal transfer of care impacts our transport in labor rate for sure. So appropriately screening. That's a good point.
So prenatally, we just to briefly touch on that, we would transfer somebody out if they had high blood pressure. If they had gestational diabetes, if they had twins, if they had a breech baby and we weren't able to resolve the position by referring for aversion, those are all non-emergent transfers. And so, in labor, the most common reason we would have to go in for a non-emergent transfer would be for exhaustion and maybe failure to make progress for somebody who hasn't had a baby before. So it's So I would say that would be it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely my most common reason. And so these are, not only are they non-emergent, but we have already been laboring for hours
so
and hours
we've had a really long time to think about the issue, because we've probably been going, let's try this, let's try this, let's try taking a nap, let's try these positions, and we have known, wow, it's not, we don't seem to be unfolding the way that we should here. Everybody's safe, but we're getting tired. Not we, but
well, we are. But that's not
laboring, the laboring person is getting tired. There's only so much the body can do, right? So, and in our blog post we put up last week, I think it was, that was on there. How to set yourself up for achieving your goal of having a home birth. That was, sleeping early in labor, resting early in labor, not paying attention too soon. And this is why, is that you get tired. Your uterus is a muscle and it can get fatigued.
And so we actually hit a point with maternal fatigue or lack of progress where we actually start losing physical momentum too, where we can end up in a position where things really start to turn into
it's not just about
direction.
being sleepy, it's about that the muscles are not functioning, and really it's very difficult to dig your way out of that. It's so that is probably a transfer, and maybe an epidural. Lots of people choose an epidural in that situation so that they can rest, and then it's like magical. It's, you just,
so many times they just get the epidural and take a nap and wake up and push out their baby.
Yes.
And we always want to think about our priority. We have like a hierarchy of what we want to happen, and of course the top priority is everybody's healthy and safe.
Yes.
The next most important thing is that we are working on that vaginal birth, and then after that is the home birth. So we want to find that sweet spot of preserving the chances that we can have a vaginal birth at the point that we go in.
Yes,
because if you wait too long, you wait too far, you can have a baby who starts to be distressed. You can have a mother who, the
baby gets tired.
So we can start seeing those yellow flags. We call them yellow flags, things that are not looking great. They can start turning into red flags if we're not judicious about the timing of our transport. So it's really important. What are some other yellow flags that we might see in labor? Non-emergent.
Let's see. I mean, I might have questions about the baby's heart rate, and I'm not sure if I would call that a yellow or a red flag. What do you think?
It would depend on what was going on, I think. But we could start seeing a baby start to sound depressed in labor.
Sound a little flat.
Distressed,
I mean,
there's so many that aren't even yellow flags that are, cream-colored flags. Like, for example, the water has broken and we can't get labor started with natural techniques. That would be one that we have all the time in the world until we run out of time.
I mean, we just, everybody's fine, but we just have a finite number of hours that we're allowed to deal with that, or that it's appropriate to deal with that, and at home, and then we transfer, and that's just how it goes.
So that's one of those that's even less than a yellow flag, but it's important that that we get somewhere where the signs of infection can be monitored for more closely, and possibly antibiotics can be administered if we do see signs of infection.
Yeah, I mean, things we are checking vitals. So, an increased pulse rate in the mother, changes in blood pressure, changes in temperature, all these things are things that we're watching. And so they are significant to varying degrees, so... and sometimes we have to transfer for if we move out of a safe place.
Some red flags, some kind of more emergent reasons for transport. What would you think of when we talk about that?
Thick mech with non-reassuring heart tones. I mean, blood pressure that has risen very high. Non-reassuring heart tones in general would be for sure. We would want to go in for that. What do you think?
maybe a almost imminent breech delivery.
Oh, that's a red flag.
We realize the baby is not coming down head first and is moving quickly. We might have to hurry up and get to the hospital in that situation.
Well, yes. I mean, if we discover that it is not what it's supposed to be.
Yes. Yes. And they do surprise us from time to time.
Yeah. So sometimes those have been non-emergent transfers because it's earlier in labor, and then sometimes it would be maybe even by ambulance if they're going because some of them are pretty precipitous.
I have transported by ambulance for a surprise breech before. And when you do transport by ambulance, it's usually a little more stressful. There's more people in your house. They're not always delicate. At least in the Denver metro area, we have the firemen show up first. Yeah. And then the paramedics show up.
Or maybe the police even show up first.
Sometimes the police, the sheriff can show up.
Which the first time that happened to me was a little bit, I was like, what? Because I came from a different state. So I was just.
It can happen for sure. Yes. So, we could have 6, 7, 8 big burly guys in a birth space, which is very disconcerting for the family. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, maybe before we talk about the process of transport, I was going to say, I think that the most common emergent transports are postpartum. I think they're usually postpartum hemorrhage or respiratory distress of the newborn.
Yeah, so I would say in my practice, definitely the most common emergent transport is for bleeding. Mm-hmm. And, and even then it rarely looks scary, but it's an emergent transport because you have to call EMS and, so it just adds that extra layer of stress. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in an emergent transport, we would go by ambulance. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is that it gets you to the right place in the hospital first. And so that is why we call 911. And I've heard people say, well, you can get to the hospital faster by private car. And that may be true, but there's a big delay in getting to the right place in the hospital in those cases.
And it's risky. I mean, it reduces confusion to go by ambulance. And it's very straightforward. It's not, you're not tempted to speed in your vehicle. And that's, I think that's good.
She's looking at me in a sideways glance because I recently drove a little bit fast on the way to the hospital.
I would never judge you for that.
And considering that I never speed.
Yes, and I have had a few tickets in my time. Yes.
Yeah. I feel like we might have gotten out of it if I had been pulled over, but I wasn't, so it's all good.
Yeah, my charms never work.
Well, it does not help when you have many incidences on your record.
Like, really? I feel like this is a pattern here.
It's like the boy who cried wolf.
Yes.
So that's kind of what an emergent transport involves, is the ambulance. But in a non-emergent transport, which is way more common, we usually have time to sit and talk about it, about the pros and cons. Yeah. Sometimes we talk about, well, would you like to wait an hour or two and see what's changed in that period of time? In those cases, we go by private vehicle. I have learned over the years not to get myself stuck at the hospital. So we make sure that my car makes it to the hospital. Yeah. So sometimes I'll drive the family, or sometimes I just meet them there. Kind of depends on what's happening.
Right. Or if you ride with them, you might have
a student,
or have an assistant or a student. Drive the car. Yeah.
Yeah. So that happens, and then usually we've called ahead, so they're usually ready for us. Sometimes they're, not sure what to expect, and they assume that we're going to be rushing in for a cesarean section. But more often, they are likely to give us lots of time, and sometimes they even give us more time. We're kind of there for an intervention. Right. And they might want to start at the beginning, like as if you've just started labor.
Right. So sometimes we have to go in saying she would like an epidural or,
Because otherwise they want to be respectful of your natural birth plan.
By far, that is the most common experience that I've had transporting here in Denver, is that they've been super respectful and just in that way.
Yeah. So, and then usually, the primary midwife will talk to the hospital staff, let them know what's going on. We kind of talk about, well, we've been laboring at home for this amount of time, and here's what we've tried, and here's kind of what the picture looks like. And we might even say she would like an epidural, like you said, or she would like to talk about her pain relief options, or those kind of things, and kind of try to pave the way a little bit for a smooth transport. And in those cases, again, it just completely depends on what the reason is that we're there. But very often we go on to have, like you said, an epidural and a nap. And a vaginal birth. And in those cases, we are usually able to get you discharged relatively quickly. We can establish, or we can resume postpartum care once you're home. And it is not extremely disruptive to your plans.
So what I hope for people in those situations is that the most that happens is that it just is kind of a bummer that we didn't have the home birth, right? But in all other ways, it's seamless and not a big deal, and everybody's healthy and happy, and we, like you said, we pick up the postpartum care right where we would usually, and it is not a big thing. But some people do find it to be really disappointing, and that is, it's totally individual, but it's something we should talk about. For sure.
Definitely. So when we talked with Dr. Courtney Klein, we talked about when your expectations are far away from what happened. This can be one of those situations that you just didn't see coming, didn't think it would happen to you, and then feel really disappointed by that.
And it's that's tough. Because one, it is part of life. It is as I go through life personally, so many things do not go the way I thought they were going to go. And the same is absolutely true for birth, and it's true wherever you're going to plan to birth. You have the people that have their baby in the car on the way to the hospital birth, and they had been, planning to have their epidural, and when they walked in the door,
That's a big deviation from what you expected. Yes.
And so, I think it's 100% okay and normal to be disappointed whenever things don't go the way that you wanted them to go, of course. But it is, life is like that. It does deviate. And so anytime we can have healthy ways to manage those feelings, I think is really important.
So we usually will talk with you at your first or second postpartum, where we visit you afterwards, to help you kind of talk about it and process it and feel all your feelings around that. Because if you don't, it can be processed in a very negative way and really impact your ability to consider, maybe consider a future pregnancy, to consider your birth plans for the future, to even bond with your child, I think can be disrupted.
And many of these things that we are talking about are very unlikely to repeat. So it's, so that's a great reassurance, but there's still grief over it. There's grief over that little loss, of that little dream. And, so it would be, make sure it's got some closure. And it would be appropriate to seek counseling. Absolutely. And, with, especially a perinatal counselor, somebody who really is skilled in talking about processing those feelings around this time period. Yeah. I think it's really important because I've seen too often people get stuck in that and not be able to kind of move past it. And sometimes it's unexpected where we get stuck in things like that. So That's we just have to figure out how to recognize when we're in those spots. And you may some people may choose not to plan a home birth the next time, and many people choose to plan a home birth. After having had a transport, it like you said, it's unlikely to repeat. And remembering that the goal wasn't really to have a home birth, the goal was to be supported
and
Yeah.
have good midwifery care and have a home birth if everything remained low risk.
Right.
And then when things didn't,
Right.
adapting as needed.
Right,
So,
exactly.
So many people go on to plan a home birth for their next
Yeah, I mean,
pregnancy.
I don't have statistics at my fingertips about that, but my feeling is that the vast majority of my clients in that situation have gone on to have a successful home birth the second time, or, you know, however many babies it is.
Yeah.
And I can think of one or two people off the top of my head who decided to have a hospital birth the next time after they had had a really long, hard labor at home, and that's totally understandable.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. It's always, you always have to birth where you feel most comfortable.
Yeah.
So that is something that many people will have to consider for the next pregnancy. Or if there is another pregnancy, that's
Right.
always a possibility. So anyway, that's kind of, you know, just the quick 411 on what transport and transfer of care and the backup plan looks like. Can you think of anything else we should have covered?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So join us next week. We're glad that you listened today, and you can find us on social media at Metro Midwifery on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and then our website is www.modmidwives.com or metromidwifery.com. And we hope that you'll join us next week.
Yes.
Let us know if you have any feedback in the comments, or
Yes, please.
reach out by email or anything. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks. Bye.